And welcome back to Attorneys on Call. Joining us in studio right now is attorney Ben Brown in Wake County, the law offices of Benjamin Brown. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Ben, I know that you had said that if people want to get a hold of Ben if they have a question, just want to mention that you can always call the Whitley law firm and they will forward you to the law offices of Benjamin Brown and get you his information. But you are a criminal attorney, and of course the Whitleys are civil attorneys, but there are times when you have to work together on a case, right? Give us an example of how that would come together.
Well, that's a great question, Drew. And in certain instances, a time when someone may be on the wrong side of a personal injury case, where they're the ones who were inattentive and caused a fender bender, may not have resulted in injury, just a lot of time and aggravation. You can be having to deal with your insurance company for the accident, and also the officer may give you a ticket for a traffic violation. So talking to an attorney who's experienced in this area can allow you to possibly have that ticket dismissed or reduced, but you certainly don't want it to also have an impact on your insurance. So one of the things that I'm able to do is offer a free consultation and call my office. We can get you to where you need to be on the case. We can discuss how to take care of the ticket in court, and we're happy to handle that for folks.
So you do work in traffic. What other types of criminal cases do you work on?
Well, I handle all types of criminal cases, misdemeanors, felonies, and of course traffic court. So it runs a wide spectrum of cases. One thing that's important is that no matter what type of ticket you have in court, whether it's a serious crime or just a minor traffic ticket, you want someone who's experienced in that area, like Ben Whitley's experienced in personal injury. I've been practicing for 23 years, and by being in court every day, I'm able to know the best result for each type of case.
Talk a little bit more about that traffic situation. I think at the beginning of the program, I talked about how there are times when you're just driving along, you see those blue lights behind you, and you, what did I do? What did I do? And it could be maybe they find your registration's out of date, or something like that, or your turn signal didn't work. Are those cases where you need to hire an attorney?
Sometimes, not always. I know that Ben has spoken about a lot of the times for personal injury cases, he may tell them they don't need an attorney. I would say the reverse is true, but there are still some cases where you could handle a ticket by yourself. But most of those cases, you're going to want to talk to an attorney. But I had a similar situation when I was driving over here to the studio. A state trooper got behind me and was following me. I checked my speed. My heart rate went up. I think back to, did we get a letter from DMV about renewing our registration? Was that for my car or my wife's car? All that went through my head, and luckily he moved on to go after someone else. But the briefest moment of inattention can lead to a ticket. So you can be doing everything you can and still sometimes get a ticket.
Ben, how did you first get to know Mr. Brown here and form that relationship?
Sure, I've known Ben a long time, and sometimes, like you mentioned, in cases where you have civil cases and criminal cases, sometimes, well, for example, if we've got a defendant in a civil case where they may have had a DUI and caused an accident, maybe we want to track and find out what's going on with him. And sometimes we'll ask Ben to help us look into that just because he's down there, and it's a different world, I think most people, when we think of criminal law, we think of the shows like Law and Order, and Ben and I, we've had lunch and talked about it. It's not quite like that. In real life. But the civil world is different. It's different in the types of how often we're going to court versus how often they're going to court. And there's just a lot of different things about those two types of law. But most people kind of think of them all grouped together. A lawyer is a lawyer. But it's very different, especially when lawyers focus their practice on one specific area.
Ben, I would assume that you have, as you said, you have over 20 years experience in doing this. I'm sure you have a lot of interesting stories. Can you share with us some things that the folks at home that are watching, especially those folks that are watching for the first time, would need to know, not only in terms of traffic violations, but in other areas?
Right. Well, I think the stories that come to mind are mostly in the area of traffic tickets.
Okay.
And it really falls under the category of you don't know what you don't know.
Okay.
Because someone can go take care of their traffic ticket, but firstly, they're going to have to take off from work. People talk about, I don't have time to get downtown to the courthouse,
Right.
find parking, get inside. I don't know what to ask for from the district attorney. And then the phase 2 of it is, what's going to happen to my insurance? Did I get the best result, or did I just get what was offered to me? And am I going to have an insurance increase? Interestingly, an insurance increase can last for 3 years on a traffic violation.
Okay.
So those points are really serious. So having a traffic attorney to evaluate that, I can do a cost-benefit analysis and look at, here's how much your insurance would increase if you went to court.
Okay.
And you think you may have gotten the right result, but if you don't, here's what can happen. A lot of times, people will call me after they've gone to court and gotten a result, and it's unfortunately resulted in the extremely high insurance rates, or they've lost their license and actually been suspended by the DMV.
Oh, really? Okay.
I can sometimes go back in and fix that for them.
Okay.
But there are some unfortunately, some tragic situations that can happen with insurance rates and license suspensions.
So driving while impaired, a very serious violation. I know you have a lot of experience in this area as well. And we were talking off camera a little bit earlier about the fact that there is a very fine line between driving while impaired and not driving while impaired. And I would think, and there's a lot of those cases where you're going to need to have an attorney representing you because it's such a serious offense. But I know people that will say, well, I just had one cocktail to get behind the wheel. I'm fine, but maybe not necessarily. And also, I have a question. Can you define what's the difference between driving while impaired and buzzed driving? You hear those terms. What is that?
Those are great points. And to address the second one, which is a funny phrase, buzz driving.
Buzz driving, right.
Technically, under the law, you can drive and have been drinking. That is not illegal. It is a perfectly legal, safe thing to do in some instances. But the moment you are impaired can be proven by either two ways. 0.08 or higher blood alcohol level as measured on an intoximeter downtown at the station, or an officer's his investigation.
His judgment almost?
His judgment could be that you are impaired because they are going to make you do all these tests at the roadside. You're going to be having to walk a straight line and walk back. You're going to have to stand on one leg. These are difficult for anyone in any circumstance. So that's a very trying situation. And someone can appear to be impaired when actually they're not. But many people get charged and they're actually not impaired. And regardless of that, talking to an attorney, getting a free consultation to see what can that attorney do for you. What's unfortunate is that I firmly believe that the level of experience in that particular area, and I've represented folks for DWIs for over 20 years, can impact a case greatly. You have to know in this circumstance with this type of DWI, what is the best result? And it's tough because being in court is a highly pressurized situation.
I bet, yeah.
People are under stress.
Right.
So what I do is I meet with someone in my office. We talk through for a long period of time about how court works, what a DWI could mean, and it could mean just expense and a lot of things that you have to, hoops you have to jump through, or it could mean jail time.
Okay.
So we go through all those options and we get ready to go to court as a team and make those tough decisions in court about, are we looking to have a plea bargain, or are we looking to have a trial and be found not guilty?
Okay, it's very interesting when you hear that, because, and I also wanted to know, when driving while impaired, it could be from prescription medicines, it could be from, it doesn't have to be just from alcohol, right?
It can be, and some people think if I'm using a prescription medicine, then it can't be driving while impaired. And unfortunately, the law makes no distinction. It could be street drugs, it could be alcohol, or it could be a prescription medication that could lead to this impairment. But addressing each of those types of DWI is important for the attorney to look into for every case. But that's a great point.
You know, we hear about points under your insurance, and if you get so many points, your rate's going to go up. Explain that for us, because I think, me included, a lot of us don't really understand that.
Right. Well, for a minor traffic offense such as registration and inspection, it doesn't count points on your license, even if you went to court and paid it off.
Okay.
But for any type of speeding ticket, no matter how minor it is, it can create points. Your first ticket, if you get an attorney and they work it out for you correctly, may not count points. It may not be on your record at all.
Okay.
And it goes up from there. A more serious traffic offense could be 40% increase, 90% increase. Careless and reckless can be a very serious increase. On up to a DWI charge, if you're convicted of that, it could triple your insurance rates.
How about if you run a stop sign or something like that?
That's one of the more minor cases.
Okay.
It falls under a 1-point violation, which is about 30% increase. That increase does carry over for 3 years, though. So that's why it's important, even though it could be a small increase, and you may think it's okay to go take care of it yourself.
Yeah.
When you factor it out over 3 years, it may have been worth it to have a free consultation.
So let's say I roll through that stop sign, or I'm caught speeding, the officer writes me a ticket, a citation, and he says, your court date is X, and what do I do then? What, as a first step, what should I do?
Well, I think one step is to back up a little bit. And whenever you're dealing with an officer, it's really important to realize that they're just doing their job.
Sure.
And to be polite, to be cooperative. It's an upsetting situation, and your heart's going to be racing. You're going to be scared about what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's important to keep your cool. Understand that they're going to process you as quickly as they can. They don't want it to take any longer than it has to. So being polite and cooperative is very important. But when you get the ticket, looking at what attorney could help you best for that ticket, calling either Ben Whitley's law firm, you could call my law firm directly, getting a free consultation so that I could find out, maybe you're one of the few people that they could just pay the ticket online.
Okay.
That is possible now, to go onto the Wake County court system.
Oh, really?
And pay a
Okay.
ticket online. I would caution you not to do that until you've gotten some good legal advice. But talking to that attorney to find out, really, is it worth it for you to go to court and risk a bad result that's going to be expensive down the road?
And so we've talked about that on this program before. If somebody's in this situation, they can call you, and it's a free consultation. There's no charge.
That's correct, right? It's a free initial consultation, and it helps them to find out what we can do for them. And if it adds value to the case, if it's a way to keep their insurance rates the same or only slightly increased, they don't have to come down to court, they don't have to miss work, find parking, and deal with the stress of taking care of their ticket. We can represent them without having them come at all. So
Okay.
it's a lot that we can bring to the situation for that type of
I did
case.
want to go back briefly to one thing that you talked about, like how your behavior if an officer pulls you over. Because I've heard things, and people have said, like, if an officer pulls you over, make sure you have both hands on the wheel so he can see both hands, and just say yes sir, no sir, and just do what he says. I mean, you have to respect his authority. And sometimes we hear about, and we see on the news, people get in trouble because they either say something stupid or they disrespect the officer or something. So have you seen those situations?
I've represented many people in those exact types of situations. There are charges that can result that are much worse than the initial thing you were charged with, even if the initial thing was driving carelessly and recklessly or driving while impaired. If you if you are in a situation where you don't cooperate with the officer,
Yeah.
you could be charged with resist, delay, or obstruct, which is a serious misdemeanor you don't want on your record. You could be charged with assaulting a law enforcement officer. Some people make the mistake of trying to give the officer misleading information, thinking, well, my license may be suspended. I don't want the officer to find out. That can lead to a charge of fictitious information.
Okay.
So it's important to not make things worse. Usually, that activity leads to worse charges than what you originally would have gotten to start with.
Great information. So happy to have you here today, and it's been a pleasure talking with you. And we're going to be back with more Attorneys on Call right after this.